Hey friends, just a quick reminder before we get into today's episode, come join us over on our Patreon. That's where we release bonus episodes every other week, and we've already got over 20 episodes from 2023 that you can download and binge right now for as little as $3 a month. We've covered so many good books there, Haunting Adeline, Chateau, Gothicana, and so many more. That's also where we'll cover any books in a series we continue, so Serpent and Dove, High Mountain Court, Serpent and the Wings of Night. You can continue those series with us on Patreon right now. Finally, as a patron, we let you know what we're going to read every month, so you can read along with us if that's your jam. Anyway, that's all from me. On to today's episode.
The whole thing about this book is that it was like a bait and switch where he's not actually Endgame. But I'm not invested in him at all.
No. Can I tell you a secret?
Yes.
It's not gonna be a secret. I'm not a super fan of Reese in the scenes that we get him in.
I'm not either. Also, he has purple eyes, and fuck that trope.
Truly. He just comes off as kind of a whiny bitch.
He is a whiny bitch, and I'm so intrigued to see what happens as we get to know him more if he just continues to be a whiny bitch.
Welcome to Your Safe Space, the podcast your partner, friends, parents, whoever thinks is dirty. Don't have time to read books? Want to understand the jokes and the TikToks? We got you, fam. We're the Spice Traders, and we deal in spicy books. I'm Katie, and I need it to make sense.
I'm Liz, and I'm hypercritical. As always, we start every episode with 3 things. The first is a generic trigger warning. You can find specific triggers for this book in our show notes, so please check those out. Also, we do use foul language and talk a lot about sex. If you have sensitivity to any of this, please give this episode a skip.
Secondly, we talk about books. The whole book, nothing but the book, so help me goddess. If you plan to read this book and don't want something spoiled right now, don't listen to this episode.
Lastly, we acknowledge that a good book can hit you at the wrong time. The views expressed in our discussion are our opinion, and we absolutely don't want to diminish the work and the talent of the authors in our community. That said, we have some notes.
Katie, start us off, please, on this journey.
All right. So, welcome, friends, to part 2 of our coverage of ACOTAR. This is part 2 of 3, and we will be covering chapters 16 through 32. And it's interesting to me, like, arbitrarily, we cut this book into thirds, but this book really fits into, like, a act 1, 2, and 3, like, format. It's spooky.
It really does. I was impressed. I mean, there's certain books, and it's so interesting to see, like, where we define, and by we, I mean you, that third or half point, that it's a fucking wild place to stop. And other times where it's like so clean and perfect, I'm like, did the author know that? Like, did Sarah J. Maas like plan this in 3 acts? Because it very much feels that way, but it's not split that way in the book, right? We don't get parts. But as I said in our debrief, I have been waiting since part 1 to go under the mountain, to the point where throughout part 2, I was like, does that not happen in this book? Like, where are we? But then where part 2 ends,
we're going under the mountain, bitch.
we're going under the mountain. Like, I get
Yeah.
it. I'm just... That being said, I am baffled that we've gone through 32 chapters and haven't even gotten to, like, the crux of, like, the meat of this plot.
Yeah, it really does highlight for me, and we kind of talked about this at the end of part 1. I'm not even sure if we recorded it or not, but we got through part 1 a lot faster than I thought we were going to, and there was a lot of, like, side chat from us, right? And I think that's because, like, not a whole lot of things happen because there's so much world building happening there.
Yeah.
And looking back on it, there is a lot of, like, oh, let's show you how high fae are different from, like, lesser fae, and, like, how the world works, and, like, how people spend their time, and, like, all of that stuff. It does feel like we wasted a lot of time there, especially when we get to the end of part 2 for us.
Yeah.
That chapter 32, like, does a whole lot of information dumping that I did not appreciate.
That could have been sprinkled out across the other 30 chapters. Well, and, I mean, we just started this recording, but I kind of feel the same way about this part. Like, I don't have a lot to say about it. Like, once we're on the mountain, I think we're gonna have much more to say. But like, there's stuff I want to say when we get to Kalanmai. But all of their like fucking frolicking through the tulips, I'm just like, okay.
Yeah.
And
Well, and I think we'll get to it when we get to it. But there are parts of that frolicking that I guess are just never addressed. Like, they're brought up and then like we don't get a full circle read on it.
yeah.
And I think that's to the detriment of like the dynamic between Farah and Tamlin, because you said this during a debrief, and I agree with you. Who we're being told she isn't jiving with how she's acting or the choices that she's making.
No, and that I feel is almost more bait and switchy in like a problematic way, because we get this a lot, especially with female main characters who don't have friends. I know that is not a direct parallel, but I think if you were to do a dissertation on this, there is a line there that female characters who don't have friends don't have a set personality.
And Farah famously does not have friends. She has sisters, and then she acquires friends because her mate has friends.
But that's the thing, and I'm excited to talk about that, because she still doesn't really have friends. Like, we see her like form independent relationships, but it's very much like, I have no friends. It's like if my only friend was James or your other friends. Not that you're my mate, but like, to flip that another, if all of my friends were people that I met through Liam, like,
right,
that I don't have any independent relationships of my own. And she continues to do that. Like Alice, okay, and we get the same trope too, that I'm noticing when a female main character doesn't have any friends, there's a female servant that's like friend-ish.
Friend adjacent, yeah.
Friend
and the
light
staff is never
TM.
your friend.
The staff is never your friend.
Like, you can be friendly, but you should never make the mistake of thinking that somebody that you're paying for their service is your friend.
Right. And it frustrates me, because it frustrates me, but I'm also curious to see in the subsequent books how her personality shifts, because I have the concern that it's going to continue to be defined by the man that she's with.
Yeah. And I've heard, I mean, there are so many podcasts that cover ACOTAR and critique it in different ways and cover it. And some of those talk about how Farah as a main character isn't very strong because she never actually gets an opportunity to take power for herself. It's always given to her by other people. And so I'm interested to see, now that we have sat on this for 2 years, read a lot of other books, and kind of matured our point of view on these types of things, how much that's going to bother us.
Yeah, because it's already starting to bother me.
Especially when, gosh, don't assassinate me for this. I'm not sure if I'm going to like Rhys anymore.
I will say that I do remember, I don't have a lot of clear memories of reading this the first time, but I do remember going through that quintessential, like, oh, the bite in the hallway is so sexy. And like, you meet Rhys. I didn't like him in this book anyway.
But why didn't you like him?
Because I thought he was a whiny little bitch who just like comes
so it's the same reason. Cool.
It's the same reason. It's the same reason. But like, it's the same reason, because he's a whiny little bitch. I just feel like all the males in this book were whiny little bitches.
Yeah.
And that did shift for me, but asterisk, caveat to that, I don't know if I thought he was a whiny little bitch because of what we actually see him do, which is be a whiny little bitch, or because I was caught up in the romance that I was told was happening.
Yeah.
And so I was like, fuck this other guy.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know if I don't know if that's what's happening now, but I do remember, or I don't remember, I'll say, feeling like Rhys was whiny ever. But, oh man, just with the exception of Kalanmai, the scene in the dining room, I remember being so powerful the first couple of times that I read it. And reading it this time, I'm just like, come on, all of you are the worst.
They're all the worst, and it's very soap opera-y, where I'm just like, really?
Yeah.
This is what we're doing?
Yeah. Right. And there's another like fringe theory that Rhys is just actually evil. And he's like hiding it, or he's just like self-motivated the entire time. Like, he's neither good nor bad. He doesn't actually give a flying fuck about anybody else except for himself and his own ability to like gain influence and power. And like, what he does to Feyre in the dining room kind of supports that.
It super supports that.
Yeah.
I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I'm kind of okay with that too. And I hope viewing it through that lens makes him less whiny. I don't know.
That's actually really interesting because I'd never heard that like fringe theory, but I saw this. It was on Instagram, and it was like a paint chip, like a paint swatch thing, right?
Yeah.
And they were all the color gray, and it was called like morally gray, and it like listed morally gray characters. And Reese was on there, and I was like, is he morally gray? Like, that's not how I would have categorized him. But in that light, I'm like,
yeah, I'm interested to see because honestly, like there were things in this book that I didn't read both of the first times that I read the book.
it's amazing.
Like the whole interaction with Nesta when like they're reunited, I didn't fucking read.
Because I did not give two shits.
No, I was trying to get to the Smex, but
which is such a letdown. Can I?
Oh my
just
God.
say? It's such a letdown.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is fine. I don't want to read detailed sex between Feyre and Tamlin.
No, I don't either, but so we talked about the Nesta book and like where maybe we forgave how much she is a cunty human being because the sex is so good. Do Reese and Farrah have good sex? I know there's
Girl,
the
I got
soup
questions.
scene, but I don't know.
I don't know. I know they don't, at least in the novella. So like,
oh, that's the worst book. Worst fucking. I'm dreading it.
anyway, so to finish my point,
Yes.
I wonder when I read the subsequent books more closely if I will pick up on more of the like morally gray stuff that Reese does, because like he, in my head right now, kind of does that thing that some of the authors do where he's like a war criminal, but like he's actually a teddy bear like most of the time. And he's got this like persona of being like this cruel person. But like if you asked him 5 questions, you would understand that he's not that.
Yeah. Which that's where we talked about this in the first book too, but his like persona in the Night Court versus Under the Mountain, like, are you supposed to be the same dude?
Truly.
I still have that question, and I'm not sure.
Yeah. Because the other thing too, in that vein, I'm interested to get there when we get there, because like to make that work, right? To make it work so that you can hide your capital city from everybody means 2 things must be true. No one can come in and no one can leave unless you fucking know about it, which is kind of fucked up.
It's kind of like North Korea.
Yeah, a little bit.
A little dictatory recent.
Yeah. So, anyway. That was a big detour, but let's get into the coverage of what actually happens in this book, in this part.
Shall.
So, when we had last left our merry band of assholes, Feyre had just survived an attack by the Naga and Tamlin had saved her, blah, blah. So back at the ranch, at the mansion, Alice helps Feyre feel put back together after a bath. She gives her hot chocolate and brushes her hair. She then tells Feyre that she was foolish for seeking the cereal out. Feyre says that Alice would understand if she had a family, but Alice bristles, saying that, thank you very much, I do have 2 boys to care for. I have a family, thank you so much. You never bothered to ask. It turns out that the 2 boys that she cares for are actually her nephews, and they were orphaned by the deaths of their parents 50 years ago. Here we learn that Fae take 4 fucking ever to grow up. So even though these boys are like 50-ish years old, they're still considered like adolescents who need to be like tended to. And having a newborn of my own, that sounds horrendous.
To tend to it for 50 years at least.
Yeah, I was trepidatious about taking on 18 years. 50 years? Holy fucking shit.
Yeah. Well,
anyway.
Listen. I do like that Alice is like, you've never asked. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Okay, but this goes back to the thing of like, Feyre, you don't have friends and staff are not your friends.
No.
Because actually, you don't care. You don't know a fucking thing about Alice.
No, but God forbid Alice isn't there when she needs something and it's like a dagger to the heart. Like,
yeah, the amount of emotional dumping that Feyre and other characters do on their like staff, female friend adjacent type characters is borderline abusive.
It is. It's revolting. And like I feel so bad for Alice because like as we come to learn, everyone else is glamored from Feyre. So she's just the only one.
Yeah. And I bet that people are like asking Alice what Feyre's like, right? Like she's like got the hot goss kind of thing.
Yeah.
And Alice is just like, I just want to do my fucking job, man.
Like, I don't want to talk to this girl.
No.
Why was it me?
Anyway, Feyre apologizes for assuming, and Alice seems to accept that because she says the next time that Feyre wants to hunt the cereal, she should come to see Alice. She says that the cereal would have basically trapped itself for a new coat. So Lucian's advice was like totally off base.
Yeah, I'd be like, oh, you got to put in the headless dead chickens or whatever.
She's like, my ass, just get it a new coat.
I also love how Alice was like, you think I didn't know what you were doing?
Right.
Okay.
I'm not an idiot.
Right. And you're not subtle either.
So Feyre goes to dinner and signals to Lucian that Tamlin knows nothing of his involvement, sending her to find the cereal, which is probably great for Lucian. They then reveal to Feyre that Fae can actually lie and that they aren't affected by iron, but ash wood can indeed weaken them. They like go through this like list of the things that Feyre has been telling us are true about Fae, and they're like, yeah, no,
And
girl.
I forgot about that too, because remember I said that in part 1, because I like the whole like Fae can't lie thing, but they're like, no, we can lie.
Yeah. I do think it's funny though that Feyre was going around like, oh yeah, that must be the truth because they can't lie. Like, trust but verify, girl.
I know. In retrospect, it's kind of like, you're an idiot.
It reminds me, there's so much about Feyre in this book that reminds me of Kronk in The Emperor's New Groove, sneaking Kronk out of the capital city with his own theme music.
Yes. Oh my god. I adore that visual. That's amazing.
Also, I learned recently that entire scene, like the made up soundtrack, was totally improv.
Was it?
Yeah. I gotta send you this article that I found. It's fascinating about the making of that whole movie.
Please send that to me. I love that movie. Now I want to watch it again.
I do too. So Lucian leaves, and Tamlin asks Feyre again why she was so deep in the forest. She decides to tell mostly the truth, so she tells him that she trapped the cereal, but she didn't learn anything because the Naga came and like interrupted their party. He then pulls out her list of written down words that she didn't know about. Like she was in the library writing down words as she read, quote unquote, a book of words that she didn't understand. And he asks her about it because it's random words like Q and like slaughter and like all of these
conflagration.
things. Right. And Feyre's too embarrassed to say what it actually is, so she just tries to leave. But Tamlin uses his super speed and blocks her path, and again offers to help her write a letter. He goes on to say that her family are in a new place with means, and their memories have been glamored so that they don't think that she's in danger. He's also implanted the notion that they should run at the first sign of danger. It's then that Feyre realizes that Tamlin has really gone the extra mile for her family. In this exchange, Tamlin asks Feyre whether she even knows how to smile because she's so serious all the time, and he wonders aloud whether her family knows all that she does for them is because she loves them. And I'm like, is it that? I'm not convinced.
It's not that. It's not that. We're told it's not that because it's just pure obligation. I don't think Feyre loves her family.
I don't think she loves her family in a healthy way. I think she is desperate for their approval and love, but I don't think that feeling or that craving is love.
No. And I do wonder if she would go to such lengths to care for them if her mom hadn't made her make that deathbed vow.
Right.
But, I mean, like, there's no way to know. There is a part in the scene that cracked me up because Tamlin, like, compliments her for killing the Naga and catching the cereal and, like, being smart. And she says, like, oh, is it supposed to be hard? And I just read it like Elle Woods, like, what? Like, it's hard?
Oh, my God.
And it just made me so happy. I just pictured that, like, what? Like, it's hard?
Excuse me? What, like it's hard?
Yeah.
I love that. So there's a couple of things in this scene, and, like, Tamlin is just so incapable of treating Feyre like a person. Like, he just doesn't have actually any empathy. And, like, they kind of allude to this later when we learn more about the curse, which we will learn about in this part.
Thank God.
About his, like, quote-unquote stone heart or whatever. But, like, he never approaches Feyre with any kind of understanding. Like the whole letter thing. He always says, you know, I can help you, but he dangles it in front of her like it's a service that he's offering, and it's not approached with like, hey, like you had other things to do, like survive, and not learning how to read is like not very high on your agenda. I get it. Like, let me help you.
Yeah, like, I'm not judging you for this. I get why this never happened.
Right. He always just rubs her face in the fact that she can't do it.
Yeah, and that's where, like, again, the issue with building this romance, I'm not sold, because there are a lot of opportunities that we could have gotten these like little cookie crumbs of building trust, and we just don't get it. And like, it's like suddenly there were no ingredients at all, but then in like 3 chapters, here's a whole ass cake.
Yeah, but like beyond like leaving like no cookie crumbs, right? And actually leaving cookie crumbs of toxic traits.
Yeah.
One of those toxic traits, going back to the fact that Feyre doesn't have any friends, is that Tamlin actually doesn't have a personality. Like,
no, he is a graham cracker.
Yeah, he's kind of a beige crayon. Like, he doesn't have likes, dislikes. He doesn't even have like hobbies.
No. He doesn't even seem particularly passionate about, like, protecting his borders. Like, he does that because he has nothing else to do, and he's, like, supposed to do it.
Yeah,
but
he is so uninteresting.
Like, in a little bit, we'll get the conversation with the Ator, and he's like, cleaning up your mess, or whatever. And I'm like, what else are you going to do, buddy? Like, they're just giving you something to do with your time.
Yes, exactly, because otherwise you would be lounging about all day.
Right. Well, and that puts it into other perspective too, where Farrah's like, well, what am I supposed to do all day? And he's like, I don't know, because I also do nothing.
Yeah.
Like,
it reminds me of like this isn't this book. This is not the problem that this book has. But we've talked about before, like books that only happen in like 2 rooms.
Yes.
Tamlin has the problem where he only operates in 2 like personality modes. Either he's like a disaffected lord who's bored, or he's hunting.
And that's it.
That is the personality.
Well, you know what,
anyway.
Katie? You're not wrong.
Okay, anyway. So with her purpose in life well and truly settled, Feyre finally asks for paint because she wants to have a hobby. Tamlin agrees and then asks if he can show her the gallery of the house in a couple of days once it's cleaned. And she's like, there's a gallery? Oh, boy. Huh? And I'm like, okay. Girl, how do you not know that? How big is this fucking house?
Well, to your point, she talks about her, like, midnight wanderings. And then when they do go to the gallery, she's like, I never found this, even in my wanderings. And I'm like, it can't be that big of a house. And no one else is there.
You've been there for months. Do you know how long it would take me to, like, even if we're assuming that this house is like the size of a convention center, I would have that place mapped within a month.
Yeah.
I don't understand. Like, what do you, it doesn't matter.
Well,
it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter, but it leads more to and I've seen this criticism joke trope online with her. It leads to all of those things that Farrah's just a fucking idiot. That she's just dumb.
Yeah. She's just dumb. Yeah. Which I don't want to knock anybody, but I mean, look, if Elaine is also dumb and Nesta got the brains of the family, that kind of makes sense.
Well, yeah, it does kind of make sense. It's rough.
Anyway, we get another dream sequence. How did you feel about this one, girl?
I hate it so much. It's just so clearly a plot device that is unnecessary.
I don't understand. Okay, so let me tell you about the dream, and then I'll tell you what's clearly happening here, and then I'll tell you why it doesn't make sense. So this time, Feyre dreams of a woman asking her name, but also cutting her throat so that she can't answer. This is foreshadowing. Mm-hmm. We've seen this before. Mm-hmm. This woman is Amarantha, who we'll learn about later, and this kind of happens, just not so literally, right? And so 2 things could be happening here. 1, she could be picking up on the like telepathic vibes from like Rhys, right?
Yeah.
Or she's prophetic. Neither of those things can be true. So why are we dreaming about it?
That's what made me so mad about it, because it's just trying to add intrigue, which in SJM's defense, this book needed some intrigue because nothing is happening.
Yeah.
But it doesn't make sense for her to be dreaming about this. Like, for her to have any sort of prophecy, I guess, yeah, with Reese, but that also isn't, we know that's not true. And the person you have shown Farrah to be, she is not intuitive enough to have this. Like, I guess you've been sprinkled, there's this, like, mysterious she that everyone's afraid of. So, like, kind of, I guess I see that. But, no.
But at this point, the mysterious she is just powerful, not necessarily cruel. So it doesn't really make sense that this person would be like hurting her in her dreams. Like it would have made more sense to add intrigue if like somebody was stalking Farrah, right?
Yeah, that would have been interesting.
Like Amarantha learned that Tamlin's got a new like fuck buddy and sent somebody to like spy on them,
which
right?
are some of the like giggles and silver bodies and like those things.
Exactly.
Why didn't we lean into that?
Right. Yeah. Anyway, the dream sequence fortunately doesn't last long because Farrah bolts awake because she hears screaming, so she goes to investigate. She would not survive in a horror movie.
Oh my god, why did she... Farrah.
Anyway, she goes into the foyer of the house, and Tamlin has brought home a lesser fae who has been seriously injured. His wings have been sawn off.
Ugh.
Lucian is there too, but he doesn't last long. He ends up throwing up into a pot and then, like, leaves the room. Thanks, buddy. Farrah, though, somehow has the stomach to stay, and she helps Tamlin hold the fae down while they see if they can do anything to help him. The whole time, the poor thing is screaming, quote, "She took my wings." There's ultimately nothing they can do, though. Tamlin says that he doesn't have enough magic these days to heal such a grievous wound, and so the fae dies while Farrah holds his hand and tells him that it's going to be all right. Afterward, Tamlin walks Farrah to her room. He tells her he's going to bury the fae alone. Farrah wants to help, but Tamlin tells her no.
And this is where I guess we start to get a cookie crumb of like, oh, look, he has a heart, but I'm not sold on it. If anything, he's just being a dick, or he's like, no, go to your room. I'm going to do this alone. Like, he's the Dark Knight or something.
Yeah. Well, so there's a couple of things about the scene that I don't really understand. One of them is, like, this fae doesn't have a mask, so he's not from the Spring Court. Mm-mm. So why does Tamlin give a shit?
And where did he find him?
Okay, that's the second thing that I don't understand. He constantly says, or we're constantly told by him and or Lucian or the Ator that's going to show up in a hot minute, that this guy and like other things are being dropped by the quote border, right? But the Spring Court is massive. So why would Tamlin go and find this poor dude and then bring him back to his house rather than wherever he was closest to in his massive territory? Because remember, this island that we're on is the size of England, and the Spring Court takes up like a strip of it toward the south, right? So like it's not a small place. So you're not just going to say that like his mansion and is in like a 50-acre park, that's his land. No, it's like hundreds of acres of maybe thousands, right? So like that doesn't make sense to me.
Well, and in that vein, it really doesn't make sense because he already knows he doesn't have magic to help. It's not like he has medical equipment at home. Like, he takes this being to the house to do...
miles away.
To do what with? Like, you couldn't fix him with magic. It's not like he has a first aid kit. Like,
yeah.
He puts him on the table and is like, I can't help you. Like, then why did you drag me here?
Right, prolonging his suffering on what was a miles-long trek. Like, you could have just put him out of his misery when you found him.
Yeah, what did you think you were gonna do at the house? It's just, it feels really plot devicey and not even for the reasons it should be.
Yeah, and, like, this is used as, like, I guess, an illustration of how Tamlin cares for his people and, like, is a good leader and, like, blah, blah, blah. I don't believe any of those things. And also this, like, never comes up again. Like, we never learn who this poor guy was, why he got his wings torn off. Like, it's just like, oh, man, that really sucks. Man, Tamlin's such a great guy. Like, What?
And even like if you're trying to build the horror of like who we come to learn as Amarantha, like there aren't any this doesn't even happen again. It's not like there's like repeated bodies of like maimed fairies.
No. Well, and it would be, I think it would be more impactful, or I would believe it more if Tamlin like sought out this guy's family and like returned his body, or like let them know where he was buried, right?
Yeah.
But none of that happens.
No, he just buries him alone in the dark like a fucking weirdo.
Somewhere on his land. He doesn't even, like, we don't see a marker for that person.
Or is there like a graveyard? Or do you just like, I'm
who
gonna
knows?
Go dig a hole somewhere and dump this body in?
Yeah, that.
Cool.
Basically.
That's why he doesn't want her to come, because he doesn't actually know how to bury someone. He's just like, I don't know.
He's just gonna push it into a ravine and hope that it's fine.
Enjoy your slumber in the land of milk and honey.
Yeah. Anyway, the next day, Tamlin and Lucia meet Feyre with saddled horses to go just on a ride, no hunting involved. And they end up in a glen. Feyre is enraptured by its beauty, and again, she feels like she hears other people around, but she doesn't see them. She just sees the silvery outlines of them. Tamlin ends up taking Feyre a little ways away from where the horses and Lucien are to an area that has this pond. But this isn't just any pond. Oh no, it's filled with starlight rather than water. But Tamlin apparently never met a follow-up question in his goddamn life, because he just accepted that at face value. He says, quote, "They never said and I never asked." Cool.
If I didn't dislike him already, that line really made me dislike him. Which might be my own personal preference, like, in my own romantic interests, but like, I don't like that you wouldn't ask. Like, I want that curiosity. And he's just like, I don't know. But isn't it cool, though?
Not a modicum of give a fuck to be found.
Also, like, there's something vaguely threatening to me about a pool full of starlight. And he's like, let's go for a swim. Like, you don't even know this girl can swim. Why would she know how to swim? Can you swim? Do you need to...
I love the way he said vaguely threatening, because it's like, is something broken that starlight fell from the sky where it's supposed to be and landed here? Should we be concerned?
Right. It's just, there's something wrong about there being a pool of starlight. Like,
yeah. What?
And his royal, they never said, who is they? Your parents? Like,
who knows? We never find out because he never asked.
And he doesn't give two shits. But this is what I was saying in the debrief, where like he takes her on this date and also brings his bestie.
Yeah, well, brings his bestie and a whole bunch of other fucking people, right?
Well, yeah,
like,
because he's a king and he needs all his servants, but she doesn't know that because she's stupid.
Not at all.
And she's like enraptured by this place. And I'm like, it's a field.
Yeah, I mean, maybe she's never seen a field before because she lives in permanent winter. I don't know. But it seemed a little bit like, wow, the grass.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Very that.
Before they go for a swim, they have a little conversation. And in this conversation, Feyre asks Tamlin if Lucien is okay after the night prior. Tamlin tells her that Lucien's had a hard life. He is the youngest son of the High Lord of the Autumn Court, and he has 6 older brothers, and they are all in competition for the throne, because it's not like the oldest brother automatically inherits, it's whoever's the most powerful. Except Lucien was never interested in that. He made his own way in other courts, making friends and betting females. He ended up falling in love with a female his father did not find suitable, and so his father had her killed while 2 of Lucien's brothers held him down and made him watch.
What the fuck?
Yeah, I don't understand why people are so mean.
I don't understand why people are so mean either. What did that achieve?
Also, why does his father give a shit? You have 6 other kids, like.
Also, like, him having a mate or falling in love doesn't stop him from being a ruler, even if it was gonna be. Like, why does it matter?
Yeah,
Just to make him sad? We just want to make him sad?
Like a control thing? It's gotta be.
And that felt kind of weak to me for a backstory, because I don't understand why that happened.
I don't either. And honestly, I don't know if we ever get more clarity on that, but it did seem like, whoa, it's dark in here for like no reason.
So like, so okay, just put this in perspective. Tamlin takes her to this vaguely horrifying pool of fluid, starts undressing, and she's like, no, I want to talk about your friend and how he was clearly upset last night. So he's like topless, and she's sort of like ogling him, but also I want to talk about this dark shit. And he's like, yeah, let me tell you all of his very personal details. Now, do you want to go swimming?
Can we go swimming now? Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
It's weird. It's so weird. And like, just to add another layer of weirdness, they brought Tamlin they brought Lucian, and he's just like back at the picnic blanket drinking, like
by himself. Well, he's not by himself. He's with the staff that they brought.
He's with the staff. But he like lifts the wine bottle to them like they're gonna go off in the forest and fuck, and he's like, yeah, boy, I am here for moral support.
Get it.
Get it. Like, I don't understand.
It's like Lucian is Tamlin's security blanket.
I think he is. Or like in case Farrah decides to kill him or something.
You okay?
Yeah, okay.
So this whole thing with Lucian led Lucian to renounce his family name and flee to Tamlin. 3 brothers ended up chasing him, but Lucian killed one of them and Tamlin killed the other, so only one went back. Anyway, after that bit of darkness, they go for a swim because Tamlin's like, can we do this now?
Like, I waited my 30 minutes after eating, and I would really like to swim now.
I really want to see you naked.
Basically.
They don't get totally naked, but you know. So as they swim, Tamlin asks Farrah how her family lost their fortune, and Farrah tells him that it started with 3 generations of bad money management. Her father took on a risky bet trying to repay those debts, but he essentially put everything that they had onto this one plan, and it didn't pan out. Specifically, he sent all of their inventory, because he has like a trading company or something, on 3 ships bound for Barat. And they sunk before reaching their destination. And this bothers me because I'm going to check right now, but I'm pretty sure Barat isn't on the fucking map.
I looked for that too.
Nope, it's not on the map.
It's not on the map.
Cool. I'm vindicated.
Yes.
And this is just one of those things where it's like, why tell me the name of the place? Just say, oh, it was going to the continent, because you've already referenced the continent. I don't need to know where Barat is. And actually, I don't know where that is. So why bring it up?
It's the problem of inviting information without giving. You're providing information that just gives more questions and weakens everything else. The other thing I didn't like about this was Farrah's telling the story, and Tamlin is basically like, your dad's a fucking idiot because you can't go that way. And she's like, yeah, thanks.
Yeah. Okay, but also, like, this goes back to what we were talking about in part 1, where Farrah, like, was brought up in this household with trading routes and blah, blah. And she knows where fucking Barat is, but she doesn't understand what's on the map of her own island.
Yeah, how can she read a map?
How can she read a map? But even if she doesn't read, like, how can she not, like, have some kind of basic geographical notion like she has for Barat, you know? Like, it's across this one sea that I absolutely know where that is in relation to where I am. And it's like, okay, you don't know what the Bald Mountain is on this map? Like,
it doesn't make sense.
How
do? I don't understand. Please explain.
So that concludes our swimming interlude, which I feel like falls into the hot spring category because this is like very similar.
Because it's like kind of steamy because she's like watching him undress and like they're like treading starlight together. The disdain I have, and I'm trying not to like lean into the disdain. I'm really not. I just.
So, as they all ride back, Lucian and Farrah talk. She thanks him for the information on the cereal, but jokes that he'll have to try harder to kill her next time. He only says that it wasn't his intention to kill her, but he doesn't elaborate. And I'm like, girl, what were you actually trying to do then? He then says that Tamlin told him that Feyre's first shot was to save the Suriel. But how would either of them know that?
I don't know. Did they talk to the Suriel?
Because Tamlin wasn't there to see the Suriel, and we haven't seen Feyre tell Tamlin. So...
Is that the continuity error?
That's one of the continuity errors. It's not the most egregious one. It is possible that they had a conversation about it that we don't see, that this is trying to reference. I doubt that.
I doubt that. Because they don't talk. When would they have had this conversation?
Right. When would they have this conversation? And it's very clear, like, we're never introduced to another instance of, like, them having an off-camera, like, conversation, you know? So, like, this would be the only instance in this book where that happens. And I don't think that that's true. I think it's a little bit of a continuity error.
Yeah, because you're right. There's no way they would know unless they talk to the Suriel.
Right. Anyway, Lucien then tells Feyre that he did hear her scream, but he hesitated to go to her. And for breaking his word, he gifts her a jeweled hunting dagger and asks that she not bury it in his back.
No promises, bitch.
Yeah. Okay. And so this is where I have in my notes, literally, eye roll immediately incoming. So I apologize. But the next day is the day that Tamlin takes Feyre to his gallery.
Of course it is.
It's freshly cleaned, and she muses, quote, "All this, he'd done this for me, as if I would have cared about cobwebs or dust. No, girl, Tamlin didn't do jack shit. About 20 servants did that. Tam wasn't on his hands and needs scrubbing no floors. Get the fuck real." I could not handle that internal monologue.
I couldn't either. And my note is very similar, where I'm just like, this is the turning point, because he brings you into a room that he did nothing to prepare.
That he had shut up because he doesn't find value in art.
Okay, explain to me why it needed to be shut up, because you don't have to go in that room. You don't have to close it off like it's full of monsters.
And again, you're not the one that's cleaning it, so why do you care if it's more things to dust?
And we get, no, like, why is this gallery even here? Where did this art come from? Who collected it? Why is he so against anything that's not just murder?
Right.
Why does he have no soul? Which, fine, we sort of get an answer, but no, we don't, though.
No, but that doesn't...
It doesn't excuse this.
No. Especially because, like, he opens this gallery for her, and he doesn't even tour it with her. He basically, like, stops at the door frame. He's like, well, here it is. And she's like, this is beautiful. He's like, I'll leave you to it, and then fucks off.
Which is so... And that's where, like, I just had a really hard time understanding the romance and where this came from. And, like, I was waiting for this, and it's just so... It's like a chapter was missed.
Yeah. Or it would have made much more sense if he was like, I just had it shut up because, you know... my servants are dwindling, like I don't have a lot, it seems like a waste of time. But then he's like very familiar with the art in the room
and spends time with her, forming that bond and relationship,
right? And says, oh, this one was done by an old friend of mine who died in the war, and so it was painful for me to look at it, which is another reason why I had it closed up.
Yeah,
give him some depth, please.
Or like when I was a child, I would come in here and spend time, and so it's also painful now because then my family died, and like give him anything, but he is a piece of paper.
And stop.
He's less dimensional than a beige crayon.
Yes, yes, that's true.
God damn.
So Feyre marvels at the paintings and tears up, and Tamlin is like. Okay, but get this. Tamlin's like, I never knew humans could appreciate art. And I'm like you appreciate art?
He is just a beast. He is just a beast of a being. He has no thoughts in his head. Zero thoughts.
No thoughts.
No thoughts, just vibes. And it surprises him that humans have emotions.
Okay. Yes. Then why does he have such a problem enslaving humans? Because we're told that repeatedly, and it comes up again later when we get the fucking diatribe about, like, what actually is going on. Tamlin repeatedly talks about how his dad and his brothers kept human slaves. And it really churned his stomach. And it was something that he was fully against. He didn't think that that was right. If you think that humans are so less than that they can't appreciate art that you yourself don't appreciate, why do you think it's a problem to like harm them, keep them as slaves? Like, what the fuck are you even talking about?
I'm literally
the cognitive
speechless.
dissonance. It's just wild.
I have no words beyond the leaps my brain has to take to like make that make sense.
Seriously.
Is impossible. It's impossible.
So Feyre stays there alone because this is when Tam's like, oh, here's my art. Okay, bye. I have better things to do. So she stays there alone and looks at the art for hours. And then Alice shows her Feyre's studio of her own, which has been furnished with supplies. And she immediately starts painting. Cool. Feyre's got a hobby.
Again, something that Tamlin had nothing to do with, really, besides ordering servants to do that.
Right. Exactly. The weeks go by and Feyre throws herself into painting and living her new life. She never lets anyone see her paintings, and this is where the sub-theory that she's actually shit at painting is just like so hilarious to me. Like in my head that's lore and no one's going to change my mind about it.
No, that is canon for me 100%. And she even says that she's not good at it, and I just picture, I cannot wait to get to whatever book it is where there's the cabin with the Bat
Oh
Boys.
my God.
And she's just like painted all over their clubhouse, and they're like, wow.
Yeah. And they're like looking at Reese, and Reese is like, I will fucking end you.
Don't say anything.
She's got good pussy and I need her to be happy.
You let her doodle on our
Okay.
walls.
Okay.
Okay.
We'll get a new clubhouse.
We'll get a new clubhouse.
Anyway, one day, Feyre realizes that spring is dawning in the mortal world, and it makes her think about her family. Specifically, she realizes how much she's let Tamlin erase her from their lives, cared for or not, and it builds resentment in her. One night, she's in the rose garden, and Tamlin joins her, but she's in no mood to entertain him, so she rips a rose from one of the bushes and crushes it in her hand, making herself bleed.
Like a fucking child.
Tamlin comes over and kisses her bloodied hand, healing it. And this is when she tells him that it bothers her that her family so easily forgot her and didn't try to save her after everything that she did for them. And that feeling that she has, she's actually ashamed of. But Tamlin tells her that it's nothing to be ashamed of if it's causing her grief. She's feeling it, and that makes it real. He also admits that he's drawn to how intensely she feels things. He goes on to say, one day all of her questions will be answered, but that day is not tonight. It's the first time that Feyre realizes that she doesn't mind his company.
I hated it. I hated it. And we get this line that like, oh no, I don't mind him now. And then the next 2 nights, it's like, I worried for his safe return. I'm like, why? Also, you don't know. Okay. This is also just really selfish. Like, you're saying that your family forgot about you, but they're taken care of, so you're like free of your burden. And also, like, you don't know that they're not like mourning you. They're probably not because they're assholes, but like, you don't know that.
Yeah, I mean, so this is one of the only times that I will defend Tamlin, because fully he offered to help her write a letter. He didn't do it in the right way.
No.
I'm going to be fully upfront about that. However, she was going to write a letter to them and then realized that they were taken care of, and then immediately like let that thought like die.
Yeah, and then was like, oh, they're fine. They don't need me, so I'm not going to check in on them anymore.
So yes, Tamlin did erase you from their life, but like you were complicit in that too.
Yeah, because he did offer twice.
Right. And only twice, because you were obsessed with it for a week and then you left it. Like,
Right, so why would I bring it up again? And you were a bitch about it.
Right.
Which is fine. Like, fine. I will only defend him so far. But I can't blame him for not being like, are you sure?
Are you sure? Yeah. Anyway. The next day, she goes for a walk in the forest, and she knows that Tamlin is following her, so she sets a trap for him. It's a snare, which basically pulls him up into the air, and I don't know how he was caught by that or how she managed to set this trap without him noticing. Anyway, he gets caught by it, but he immediately cuts himself loose, and then he gives her a pile of limericks from the words that she had written down that she didn't know, and each limerick is, like, filthier than the last, and this is supposed to be, like, a skill he has.
Right, like, somehow he honed the skill of writing poetry because they had, like, poetry battles at the war zone.
At the war camp.
It's the only note about his personality we get, and it doesn't make any fucking sense. Also, the fact that he's writing dirty poetry also doesn't match.
No, because we're repeatedly reminded that Tamlin doesn't have a sense of humor.
Right. But somehow he can write filthy limericks.
Okay.
I don't buy it.
Girl.
You paid someone to write those, and you're paying them off as your own.
Yeah.
He didn't write that shit.
As they walk back to the house, Feyre asks about his parents. Tamlin had mentioned earlier that his father planted the rose garden for his mother. So he tells her now that Fae can marry and can also be truly mated. When they are truly mated, like his parents were, marriage feels like kind of an insignificance after that. It's clear that Tamlin doesn't like talking about his parents, but he tells her that his father was just as bad as Lucian's and that he and his brothers all kept slaves. And even if his mother was against it, she wouldn't say anything against her mate. He tells her that he wanted no part of the contest to be his father's heir, so he went into the army, his father's army. But eventually he became too powerful and no one could deny the fact that he was his father's heir. But before things could come to a head, another High Lord from an enemy court killed his entire family. And he still doesn't know why he was spared. We don't follow up on this for our way too long. And she asks not a follow-up question. She's like, wow, that's awful. Anyway.
Well, and even though he delivers it, he's like, and luckily for me, they were all slaughtered.
Right.
Like, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But this is another instance where he talks about, like, oh yeah, slavery, blah blah. But I'm like, okay, but do you think humans are
people
worthy, like people? Yeah, but like,
oh,
I
yeah.
guess
That, yeah,
you know what I mean. But
you know what I mean is really the thing.
you know what I mean. Like, which is it, girl?
Yeah, are they functioning beings that have feelings and emotions and lives, or are they slaves?
Right.
Because this is one where I don't think both things can be true.
Not for someone like Tamlin.
No.
Because of this conversation, Feyre feels a kinship with Tamlin because it's clear he is rough around the edges, having missed that training that his brothers received in terms of, like, social graces. And she sees herself in that. She hears her sister, Nesta, calling her a half-wild beast in her head.
As she walks with a literal wild beast.
Yeah.
And again, my note was like, this is the bonding point. Now it's love.
Yeah, it's interesting to me how Feyre makes all of these false equivalencies, and this is one of them, right? Like,